Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Ipswich, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only place to find your daily content on every single Premier League club, the Premier League as a whole, and women's football. On today's edition, we are going to be reflecting on the dismal defeat at home to Spurs suffered on Saturday. And to join me to suffer through the pain of reliving that game, unfortunately, is Richard Popple. Sorry, mate, you've got the short straw to be doing this one to me today. James and Tom have got the more fun and optimistic one tomorrow.
Yeah, I suppose so. No, it's all right. I mean, we're kind of used to it at this point, aren't we? Really?
Yeah, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not been as many wins as we hoped for with this to report back for this podcast when we sat down at the start of the season to go through it. Especially in your case, when you hoping we'd scrape in the top half, but
that looks more and more sort of foolish prediction. But it was many months ago now, and obviously we've got used to the fast lane of the Premier League.
Yeah, well, it feels like this weekend was a very, very big weekend at both ends of the table in the Premier League, which we will get onto. But let's focus on ourselves first before we talk about potential ramifications elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very strange game, wasn't it? Because you could argue we were the better team, and we walked away losing 4-1. I mean, we first 10 minutes especially. You said we could have had one or two, and then 15 minutes later we're 2-0 down. It's a very odd game, sort of. Where does that sit with you compared to sort of other games this year?
Yeah, I think the scoreline's maybe a little bit misleading. You could argue, that we had better opportunities, certainly at the start of the game, and then obviously we were pushing. Having gone in at half-time at 2-1, we were very much pushing in the second half, and obviously had a goal disallowed and all the rest of it. But that's just sport, isn't it? Spurs took their chances. They were really clinical when they had those opportunities to, and that's the quality that they've got. They've obviously come back into a little bit of form a little bit before this game, and even more so because of this game. So maybe it was a bit of a bad time for us to be playing them. Obviously, they've got quite a few players back and stuff, but I think the result, whilst maybe is a little bit misleading on paper, I think Spurs were probably good value for the win, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, we almost played into their hands, I thought, really, because the reason they've picked up in form recently is they've stopped being so gung-ho, sit the whole defence on the halfway line, and they've actually started being a bit more solid defensively and relying on the counter-attack. So then, naturally, our response to that is to change our setup and go, let's have loads of the ball, let's keep the pressure on and play exactly how they wanted us to. Which seemed a bit bizarre, really, from my side. There's not many times in the last 3 years I've questioned how Kieran McKenna set up for the game. Well, I think he got it wrong on Saturday, which we'll delve a bit more in depth for later. But let's pick the positives out first before we get too harsh on it, though. 17 shots we had, which admittedly only 5 on target from there, and not too many clear opportunities. But we'd had double-figure shots before half-time, which we've had many games we haven't got that in 90 minutes this season. So there's improvements there on one end of the pitch, even though we've walked away with only scoring one goal. But do you think we've sort of taken the first step in rectifying that? Because goals is the big thing we've got to sort out if we want to stay up, isn't it?
Well, I think it's at both ends of the pitch at the moment, isn't it? But yeah, obviously goals has been certainly the problem throughout the season on a fairly consistent basis. I think, the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game, we should have been ahead. We could have been 1 or 2 ahead, certainly. And with a bit more of a clinical kind of, finishing these chances off, then that could have been the case and it would have been a very different game. But people have spoken about this for ages, that's been the story of the season, the fact that we haven't really taken the opportunities when we've had them, and then when we have fallen behind, we've not really been able to respond. And, we seem to have run our race already to a certain extent and find it difficult to come back into games. But in terms of the attack, Tottenham aren't very good defensively, and they're missing quite a few of their players anyway. So that was the area of the game that we could hurt them. I always thought we would score in the game, and obviously we did. We nicked the ball off them countless times fairly high up the pitch. We created opportunities, but then we kind of stopped doing that at periods in the second half. Or, Spurs got a little bit better, a bit more control of the ball, you could say. But Delap, I think, wasn't given enough of the ball. He was a bit of a peripheral figure for chunks of the game, which was disappointing because I think he really would have got at Archie Gray and did a couple of opportunities that you saw him do that. But yeah, I think our players do carry a threat. But yeah, unfortunately, you have to be clinical when those chances come along.
Yeah, so we're still a long way from the solution, aren't we? But it felt like a step forward that we've upped the amount of chances we were creating. However many of them were realistically clear cut is another question. But so improvement on that end, but it's almost the opposite at the other end of the pitch, isn't it? We were always saying until about a month ago that the strength we've got compared to other teams, we don't concede as many goals. That's the difference between us and say a Wolves, for example, who had I think it was the worst defence outright, including Southampton at the time. And they've picked theirs up under the new manager. It's got slowly getting better. No clean sheet for them this weekend. We've gone the other way. We let 6 in at City, 4 in at Liverpool, 4 in again today. It's sort of the one thing we had sort of going in our favour has started falling away, and there's some poor goals in there again, weren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So at the start of the season, even those first kind of like 12 games and stuff before we won the first game against Spurs, the only game I think where we conceded 4 was the City game, right? The second game of the season. Mm-hmm. Other than that, we weren't really getting battered. And since then, we've been hammered by Newcastle. We've lost to Liverpool, Man City again, Tottenham. And all right, these are all very good teams. That's completely understandable. But it didn't really feel like that was much on the cards at the start of the season. And that Newcastle game, I think, had quite a big impact, particularly because it was at home. We just got, we looked terrible defensively that day. And I think you can kind of say, again, for whatever reason, at home, we don't seem to be as solid defensively. I guess that's probably because we're having to be a bit more offensive and on the front foot, and we're trying to kind of like take the attack to the opposition, which is what you should do at home, I suppose. But it's not worked all year, and it's our home form that's going to get us relegated fundamentally. So it's really disappointing to see some of those goals. I thought the first goal was terrible. People are kind of blaming Ben Godfrey, but I've no idea what Dara O'Shea is doing there. He's basically standing behind Ben Godfrey, and then he looks like he's pointing at him or something, telling him where to go. But he should have been at the front post, marking that space to make sure that he was the second defender, not letting that cross come in. So I have no idea what he was doing. And I think that shows the kind of communication, it seems, at the back with the whole goalkeeper thing. Players being in and out through injury and suspension and all the rest of it. We've changed our back line so much, and it just feels like there's no cohesion there. And unfortunately, that seems to be catching up with us a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. There's the same old problems repeating themselves, certainly in the last month or so. But just going back to the setup, what was your thought when you saw that lineup come out? Because to me, it caught me by surprise that. I know we've been very back and forth about the 5-back setup, haven't we? But we used it last week against Villa, and even when we went down to 10 men, we didn't lose it. We didn't switch to a 4. We brought another defender on and stuck there. We got a result, and obviously our first win of the season came at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with that setup, and it frustrated Spurs. So to me, it was a surprise to see a 4, and some of the names, and obviously Godfrey coming in makes sense if you're going to play a 4, I suppose, with obviously Twanzebe suspended, but. To me, some of the names on there and the setup came as a surprise to me, and ultimately it was probably quite a big reason why we've lost in the end. So, did that sort of shock you as much as it done me? Was that how that lined up?
No, I don't think so. And I think there is an element of like you do want to do the thing that your opposition isn't expecting. And I think Spurs probably would have expected us to line up with the back 5 because, as you say, we had the victory at Spurs with that. But I think if you are at home and you're playing against a side that is quite weak defensively and the confidence is a bit fragile as well, then you've kind of got to back yourself a little bit and put some of the players on, go for a more attacking approach. And obviously that's what McKenna decided to do. So I think that, philosophy is correct personally. I don't think we should be going into games with a defensive mindset, particularly at home. I think I'd rather, as if we're going to go down, I'd rather us go down having a bit of a swing than sort of like, losing games sort of 1 or 2-1 and not really being in the games because we're not creating any opportunities. Because as you say, we had 17 shots in the game. So I'd prefer us to be playing with that more progressive approach. And I think we have the players to do that. I think, unfortunately, it goes back to what I said earlier. I just think the changes at the back, personnel, formation-wise, etc., has just really hampered any kind of unity there. And I think individual errors have sort of hurt us all year. And you could point at Ben Godfrey, and I know he didn't have a very good first half, so maybe he was a bit of a surprise in the team. But what was the option? Ben Johnson, I suppose. And Ben Johnson's not played very well at right back this year. So I guess why would McKenna go back to that? So I think he got it right personally. I think he did what I would hope he would do, and maybe it did surprise Spurs a little bit because we started so well. But as soon as we fell behind, it felt like a difficult afternoon was ahead, and unfortunately that's how it turned out.
Yeah, so the goal came, the first one felt a bit like a bit of a killer, didn't it? Because we don't score many goals. It almost straight away, we have to go score 2 now, which we haven't done many times this year at all. And it was against a runner play at the time, but we'll delve into the goals in a little while. We're going to have a quick break now from one of our sponsors, and then when we come back, we'll talk throughout the 5 goals in the game.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
And we are back for the second part of today's show. So let's dive into the goals, Rich, that we've mentioned already. Against a runner play, the first one, we'd had a couple of really good opportunities to go ahead already. I think Delap had caught the post, didn't he, on an effort by then. We were certainly looking on top, that he sort of felt if anyone was going to take the lead, he thought it was going to be us. And then down the other end, he's toyed with Godfrey a bit. Like you said, O'Shea sort of come across and done nothing to help. And then it's a tap in for Johnson, isn't it? Which he's very good at putting himself in those areas. So you look at he's got 13 goals this year, and I reckon about 10 of them have been within the 6-yard box. He's just in the right place every single time for one of them, isn't he? But a really disappointing one to concede, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like Raheem Sterling, isn't it, at Man City, when he was like actually an effective, good player. Yeah, but Johnson's really good. He's had a really good year, hasn't he? And he does seem to be that partnership with kind of like Son and having a player like that, because Kulusevski's great, but he doesn't quite play the same way and doesn't quite sort of like bang into the box and hit the back post and stuff. But from our point of view, it was just way too easy. It was like one pass through the midfield. Calvin Phillips was kind of jogging back, and then he saw the danger and started to sprint a bit, but it was all just a bit slow. The whole thing was just slow to react, and I think that's the way we've kind of defended all year a little bit. And yeah, Godfrey kind of gets done. I've sort of said my piece on Dara O'Shea. I don't know what he's doing at that point. It just leaves the whole box open, and unfortunately Greaves and Davis don't react quicker than Johnson. So yeah, it all looked a bit too easy, really.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it didn't really get any harder for Spurs, did it, for the second goal? It was near enough a carbon copy, weren't it? Ball into Son, Godfrey gets beaten too easily, ball across the box, and Johnson was there again. That was a frustrating part, you'd say, wasn't it? It almost felt like no lessons were learned from the first one, despite some good play from us in between the 2 goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose Son didn't go on the outside for the second goal. He kind of cuts back in, doesn't he? And sort of like makes his way across the box, towards the box a little bit, and then pulls it back. And, again, the defending, the reactions to it, could there have been a better reaction? Maybe. A couple more bodies being chucked on the line. I think Greaves kind of threw himself at the ball a little bit, but again, the reaction time seemed slow. It just seemed like we weren't responding quick enough. But I think that's what it does look like when you're losing lots of games of football, unfortunately, and you are playing good players. And I think Son knew he had the beating of Godfrey following the first goal. And, obviously we'll talk about the fact that he was hooked at half time. I know he's on a booking as well, so that probably came into it. But I think Godfrey was a bit spooked by it. He doesn't seem to be playing with a massive amount of confidence, particularly. And arguably he's not really a right back anyway, so maybe he's being played sort of a bit out of position, or not in his favoured position anyway. So yeah, it was all a little bit disappointing and a bit inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah, so like I said, the frustration for me was just how similar they were. It was a ball over the top to Son, who has looked so poor in many games this year, but typically seemed to be on it as soon as he comes to Portman Road. And so Godfrey had a nightmare, didn't he? And so he's been skinned for both the goals. He's on a book, and then he got hooked at half time. It's not exactly the game. It's not a game to be proud of by any means, but it just felt like I said, so many lessons could have been learnt from the first one. To then be beaten by near enough the same thing again the second time was frustrating. But the response after conceding the second goal, as it was after the first one, was very good. And obviously we went and got a goal back from Amari, who had another very good game. We sung his praises after Villa last week, and he was one of the shining lights. Because in this game, I thought again that he's starting to hit the level that in the last couple of weeks that we've been saying for him for a while now, that we know he can hit, and it's been a bit frustrating he hasn't been. But really, it's a well taken goal for him, weren't it? So just his third of the season, but looks to be turning it around a bit.
Yep, definitely. I agree with you. I think it was another pretty strong performance from him, really. I think as well, going back to the defence a little bit and thinking about those wide players, I know Hutchinson was playing in the 10 for this one, but there's been a lot of comments around this about, the fairly lightweight, short stature of the players in those positions. But I think it's not really just about that. It's kind of about the work rate as well. And it does seem to me that if you play that system of one striker and then you've got three attackers behind, those two attackers in the wide positions need to be doing quite a lot of defensive work, because the danger was that Son, after the first goal, that Son is one-on-one with Godfrey and he's got the beating of his man. So at that point, you have to double up on him. Now, at times, Philogene was getting back and at times Clark gets back, but there doesn't seem to be that consistency of some of the top wingers in the league where the defensive side of their game, who can we think of as examples? I mean, an example would be someone like Gabriel Martinelli, who a lot of people have a go at in terms of like going forward because his numbers aren't great. But defensively, he always puts in an incredible shift and he always helps his fullback out. And I think our wingers need to develop that side of the game. And McKenna said that about Hutchinson last year in the Championship, and that's why he had a pretty ineffective first half of the season last year, because he was like, it's all well and good on the ball and stuff, but I need you to be working hard and coming back. And Hutchinson did do that. And he's a really hard-working player in the team. And I think the other wingers that we have, Burns does it a bit more naturally because he's been at the club for a while and stuff. I think Ogbene would have been that player as well because he's got a strong physique and stuff. But Philogene and Clark aren't quite doing that to a consistent level, and I think that hurts us quite a lot. It makes us quite open.
Yeah, so it's an important thing to have, isn't it? You look at a very recent example of yesterday, the Liverpool-Man City game. So Mohamed Salah is someone you would never say who, as a winger who tracks back, but you saw he spotted how much Alexander-Arnold was struggling with Doku, and he just got back every time he needed to, didn't he? Which is such an important thing for your winger to do, particularly if you're struggling. I say it needs a bit of awareness from Philogene or Hutchinson, whoever was on the right hand side at the time, because I know they mix and match. But to just see, obviously, that Godfrey's being left 1v1, he's struggling. Someone go and give him some extra help. And like you said, that's something we're not doing a lot of the time. Broadhead does it, but there's not too many others that do. Yeah. There's not many others in the squad who do. Smolix doesn't do it when he's up there either, because he's naturally he'd rather push further forward, even though he does a lot of running, but he doesn't particularly drop in like that. Philogene and Clark don't do it too often. We haven't got many people that do that, and there's probably a reason why we get exposed out wide fairly often. Some of the goals we can see, we're quite good at defending through the centre, but out wide, not so much, which probably, like you said, there's probably quite a key reason why, because there's not much defensive responsibility from our wingers, certainly those who are available at the moment. But they as long as they perform well, they do the day job at the other end of the pitch, maybe we'll go all right on that front. So the attacking side done well this game, but you sort of felt from 2-1, you're almost expecting us to get back in the game, really, weren't you? That you thought we'd come out second half. We looked quite sharp off the start with, didn't we? We obviously made a change, which made a difference. thought we'd equalise, but Wolfenden was about 3 yards offside when he really didn't need to be, if we're being completely honest there. But it's fairly poor. Like, it defend. Talk about strikers' challenges at one end of the pitch, but that is a defender's awareness. He's not spotted. He's completely gone. He's gone far too early. It's fair. Like, if that was the lap, you'd be raging at him, wouldn't you? But because it's Wolfenden, he's a centre half. You let him off a little bit, but fairly poor. But then, yeah, you were sort of waiting on us to equalise, and then suddenly it's 3-1 to Spurs with not long left on the clock, and then you knew it was game over at that point. Look, it took a deflection, so Palmer had no chance. But again, we don't cover ourselves in glory at the back, do we?
No, but as you say, up until that point in the second half, it was a really even game, and it did look like if anything, we would get ourselves back into it with the equaliser. So that's encouraging, right? I think from the moment that we went 2-0 down, we had probably about a 30-minute period in the game where we were really good and we were really competitive and sort of won that period of the game. But unfortunately, again, it comes down to where we're creating really clear chances and where we're making the most of sort of like, half opportunities or whatever. And sadly, we weren't. And then, the third goal goes in, a little bit of luck for them. Again, we're a wee bit static, a wee bit easy to play through. But, things like that happen. And I think at that point, unfortunately, you kind of did see the level drop a little bit and maybe the belief sort of drop a little bit and stuff. But like I say, right at the start, 4-1 does flatter Tottenham a little bit. I don't think the game was 4-1. But I don't think we can be sitting here thinking we deserve to win the game either. You know what I mean? I think Spurs probably were good value for the result overall.
No, definitely. So it's not a game it's not a game you sort of walk away thinking we should have got something based on the performance. But for me, the key is it was a game where we could have, and we didn't do enough. That was the concern for me, because that was we matched Spurs for the majority of that game. And that was a game to go and put a statement result in that we were competing well enough, just needed to get over the line, get the ball in the back of the net more times than we did. The opportunity was there. We haven't had many better opportunities, particularly at home, where we've been lacking enough to get over there, especially in recent, like I say, the last month or so. We were clearly struggling for confidence. That was a game to sort of take it by the scruff of the neck and get the result. And that's where the frustration is for me. It's not should have, but it was certainly a could have, and we didn't do enough, which is the concern. And so the fourth goal, it always felt a bit insignificant because you knew we weren't coming back from 3-1, because the chances of us scoring 4 goals in the game was incredibly low, even 3 to get a draw. But the fourth one annoyed me the most out of anything, because you've just played into his hands, haven't you? Like, you know what Kulusevski's like. You've let him come back onto his left foot. You've then backed off and let him shoot, and then you almost act surprised when it finds the back of the net. It's just you've done everything you wanted him to do, or everything he wanted you to do, basically, as a defender in that point of view. And then you just go have to throw your hands up and go, it's a good finish, isn't it? When it hits the back of the net. No, there's been multiple times you could have. There was no effort to show him down the line, no effort to stop him getting back on his left, and no effort to block the shot. And it's just finding the back of the net. It really annoyed me that it's insignificant it was as in terms of the impact on the game. That one, for me, was the most frustrating of the 4 to concede. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, but I think it is that belief thing, isn't it? At 3-1, you're like, we've just been banging the door down, or, knocking at the door or whatever. We had a goal disallowed. And then the sucker punch, third goal for them. And you just, the energy levels just drop fractionally, and good players punish you. But you're right. I mean, the basics aren't particularly done. But how many times could you say that this season about our defending, really? Leif Davis, I think, of quite a few, maybe is one of those players that is really low on confidence at the moment. He really does. He wasn't getting forward very much, particularly. Maybe that's because of the way Spurs kind of played him, and obviously Johnson's a threat and Kulusevski's a threat as well. But yeah, he's not in his best moment. He's actually probably in his most difficult moment as an Ipswich Town player. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds before the end of the season. And I think, from a lot of us thinking that he was close to the England squad, end of Championship, start of the Premier League time, I'm not entirely sure if you could say that now, because you look at someone like Jed Spence, who's a right back, really, but he's a much more effective. He's in a much more effective sort of vein of form, both going forward and at the back as well. And he's a great athlete, so you would suspect Tuchel would be looking at somebody like him way ahead of someone like Leif Davis at the moment. But hopefully, Davis can get it back at some point. Might play into our hands because it means he might stick around if we do go back to the Championship for another year. But yeah, it wasn't a great piece of defending. I agree.
No, certainly not. But overall, so 4 fairly disappointing goals to concede on what was overall not a bad performance at all. Like you said, the scoreline flattered Spurs. It wasn't a performance that deserved to lose by 3 goals, but the game doesn't play out on what you deserve, does it? It's what you actually go out and do, and that's where the frustration, like I say, for me was that the performance was there to go and get something, and we didn't. Which has been how many times we said that this year, which is becoming increasingly a problem, as this weekend showed. Which we'll have a quick break again now. When we come back, we'll talk about what went on around the rest of the league this year and the rest of the weekend, and how concerning that sets us up with as we enter the last third of the season. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. And we are back for the final part of today's show. So, Rich, mate, look, the weekend's gone pretty terribly for us, hasn't it?
Terribly.
Yeah, but look, let's preface all of this before we even have the conversation. There's 12 games to go. All sorts can change in that time. But it felt like a really significant weekend at the both. I said it at the start of the show, at both ends of the table. You think, in the end, we're not that bothered about. Liverpool's lead going to 11 points. He sort of feels pretty much unassailable at this point. And then our end, ours and Leicester's gap to survival has increased to 5 points. And also, damningly, we've hit that point now where teams down the bottom start becoming horrible to play and picking results up, stereotypically. Every single team in the bottom half of the table picked up at least a point, except the 3 promoted sides, which sort of shows you maybe where the gap is, because it's not just... I know you can say obviously the performance was good, but like I said, the flat Spurs, but ultimately 7 out of 10 teams in the bottom half, and 5 of them have got a win. Everton and Man United drew to each other. Then there's us 3 in the bottom 3, all shipped in 4 at home, which is a fairly damning assessment of the situations of all 3 of us, really, because you have to go ultimately as well. So we have to be grouped in that category as well. I know Southampton are a bit further back on their own, but Tom said it when watching the Leicester game Friday night, that how we're on the same points as them, that you might question that from the performances, but ultimately we are. And like I said, the gap's got bigger. It's still a long way to go, but it's another real hit to the confidence levels, isn't it? After a good result at Villa last weekend, we started to pick ourselves up.
Yeah, it kind of, as you say, it went kind of as badly as it could do, really. But yeah, it sort of feels as if the Premier League it might be a bit boring, if I'm honest, for the part, the final kind of 10 games of the season, because as you mentioned, like at the top, it looks like it's Liverpool's title, really. I'd be amazed if they blew it from this point. It's kind of interesting around the European spots because there's lots of teams in the sort of 40 kind of range, and they're all sort of bunched there together. But at the bottom, you're right. I mean, I think that is a telling statistic, I think, about the 3 promoted sides, or in the bottom 3, all shipping 4 goals at home this weekend. It did look like, that's a pretty clear signal that these 3 are the ones that are in real trouble. And I think with Wolves, they have started to look a bit more solid over the past few weeks. And I know they've won, obviously, 2 of the last 3. Winning at Bournemouth is a very impressive result, given how good they've been over the last few weeks. So I think they're going to be super confident at this time. And I think realistically, if they win 2 more games, where are we going to make up that shortfall? It's already a 5-point gap. If they get to 28 points, are we going to get another 11 points this season or 12 points this season? At the moment, it seems pretty unlikely. So, yeah, look, we all know it looks pretty difficult at this stage. And, you get these, as you mentioned, you get a kind of bounce back result with the Villa one, and you hope you can build on it and stuff, and then not quite being able to do that. we obviously have another opportunity on Wednesday, United, and they're not a great side at the moment at all. So it is an opportunity to try and get something there, but ultimately you're at the point now where you need to win games. So does the approach become even more kind of like gung-ho in order to try and do that? But yeah, you're right, it was a very significant weekend. It felt like some things have been kind of like sorted out that are going to take a titanic kind of like reversal to be able to change.
Yeah, like I say, but big opportunity in the week. There's not many teams who look as poor at home as we do, but Man United are one of them. So certainly there's an opportunity there to maybe get a result in the midweek. But like you said, now there's always this stereotype, isn't it? You don't want to play a team battling relegation in March, April, or May, do you? Because they're scrapping for their lives. They're going to be horrible to play against, and that's the point we've hit now. And that's where my worry is when I come out of this weekend, is that obviously not all these teams are fighting relegation, but you don't want to play these teams down the bottom this time of year. 5 of them have gone and showed that and got wins this weekend, and we've played well and lost 4-1. It's almost like if we'd have played badly, it would have been easier to take. But we put a very good shift.
We played all right.
Yeah,
we played all right. I don't think we can say we play. I mean, yes, we did play well, but not for 90 minutes, right? We just didn't. Yeah. So that's what you need to do.
Yeah, but say again, when I look at where my worry is, I've said it all season as well, but when I say these teams getting the results, let's look at the 2 directly closest to us in the table. Wolves, West Ham, grinded out 1-0 wins away from home. I've said it multiple. We're not capable of that. I keep saying it, hoping that I'll get proved wrong at some point. But we haven't got one like that in the locker at home or away. We haven't got that grind out a low scoring result, get over the line when you need to, and that's how you become difficult to play against in these scenarios. That's where my massive worry is, because when I look at any of these games, I don't have to look at who the opponent we're playing. Just from what we've got, I can't see us grinding out these 1-0 wins that you have to just fight everything for and scrape over the line for a massive 3 points. I don't think that's our style, and we've got that in the locker. I don't know if you disagree with me on that.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think even in the Championship, we were really open. Like, there were games where we were conceding, 1 or 2 goals a game, and we were just outscoring opponents in the Championship. And obviously that's not the case here. I mean, I was quite surprised when Tom predicted, I think on Friday, he went for a win, which I did too. But he went for 1-0, and I don't see us keeping a clean sheet for the rest of the year, if I'm totally honest. I just don't really see it. I think the confidence is kind of, really lacking at the back. And even though Palmer has kind of obviously helped, and I think he is a good goalkeeper, that he still ain't going to be able to keep everything out if we're just letting fairly easy chances kind of like be coughed up. So I think it's very difficult to see us grinding those out. We don't look solid enough in that respect. I mean, maybe if you go super defensive and just literally try and hit people on the break like once or twice a game and get lucky, then maybe you nick a result like that. But I think, unfortunately, we haven't found the magic formula, right? That's why we've only had 3 wins all year. But another opportunity, as I say, on Wednesday. Football can change unbelievably quickly. If you manage to nick a win somewhere, which we have done at other points of the season, obviously Tottenham, Chelsea, etc., then all of a sudden you can use that as a springboard. I think we have to get to the Wolves game, which I think is at the start of April, right? We play Wolves at home. 5th of April. We have to be within no more than we are now away from them, which is 5 points. Because then if you win that game, you would potentially get to 2, and then it's like a 1 game shift swing. So that's the sort of challenge for us, is not to let this gap get any further. And I think the reality is Wolves are going to pick up more points based on how they're playing at the moment. So Town are obviously going to have to do the same. Yeah,
definitely. Look, like I say, United's an opportunity on Wednesday night. Whether you want to admit it or not, because the history of obviously what they're like, and there's still some very good players there, but their record at home under a Ruben Amorim is shocking. There's no other way to put it. It's really, really bad. They are an away team.
I don't think he wants
that. Like we are.
I don't think he wants that job. It's so weird the way he's talking about it. It's like, I kind of hate this.
Yeah, yeah, but that
I
is a
feel
real
sorry for the guy.
opportunity. Like, it's not to the point of like it's embarrassing if we don't go and get something there, but it will feel like a massive missed opportunity if you come out with a defeat in that game. Which is, I think, which feels mental to say, like I say, because it's Man United we're talking about. But you take the name away and just look at on paper. That is a game. That's a serious opportunity to go and get someone. Like I say, we're in that time of the year where people should be dreading playing a promoted team, or not promoted team, sorry, a team down the bottom. And we've got to start turning around because certainly after United, then we get a nice break, FA Cup. We can sort of dare to dream of progressing further. You know, we're effectively 180 minutes away from Wembley if we turn up against Forest, and then to get through and turn up in the game after that. But when we come back from the FA Cup and we're in March, it's do or die time, isn't it? There's no excuses can be made regardless of who you're playing. It's go and get results, as many as you can, or you'll fight for your life, basically. But I think weirdly we somehow took a step in the right direction with some of the elements from Saturday. Sorry, despite the result, I think you're right, it's getting them all together. Because put it in context, look, I particularly have been very harsh in some of the stuff I've said on this game. But ultimately, there's one team in the Premier League that have won 3 games in a row at the moment, and it's Tottenham. So it was a bad time to play them. There's all these other teams stumbling here and there. They are quite actually the only team to have won their last 3 games. So they are a side in form. Yep. It was a tougher game than it would have been a few weeks ago. But we need to go up a gear now, because I'll say it was a damning weekend, the most damning we've had so far, I would say, in terms of not so much ourselves and what happened around us, because it literally, like I say, every other team in the bottom half that's not in the relegation zone already getting points on us this weekend. I know you're obviously not looking up as high as even like Everton, really. You're not even looking that high and further onwards, but that's bad. That's bad. That's really bad. Like I say, it's not just that. It was the difference as well, is that with, like, say, the promoted teams, people have been getting points, but you've all lost at home by letting 4 goals in. And it can't keep going that way. You can't keep looking at other teams getting results. And like I say, it's do or die territory now. And hopefully we kickstart it with a result on Wednesday night, which Tom and James will be looking ahead to that game for you on tomorrow's episode. Like I say, a big opportunity there. And I say the lads will talk you through all of that and sort of see how we might set ourselves up and what they think our chances are of a result at Old Trafford. But tune in tomorrow to hear from Tom and James on that front. But from me and Richard, that is goodbye from now. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and we will catch you later in the week.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.